And we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sport. It is a Tuesday afternoon, and we are almost the halfway point of the week before we can then get going and start getting ready for the weekend, which will feature a whole bunch of URC action. But some interesting Springbok or SA Rugby news, rather, is that the coaching staff for the SAA games at the end of the year, who will be taking on Bristol as well as Munster, has been confirmed. A very interesting coaching lineup, very much a coaching lineup for the future as well. And a very good coaching lineup, and I'm very chuffed to see some of the names that are involved in it. And I think it's been it's very interesting to see how they've managed to sort of keep it kind of in house, but bring in sort of people from with sort of the broader the SA Rugby structure. I think it sort of gives you a bit of an indication of players and coaches who are very much viewed as being in the sort of SA Rugby pipeline and going to be moving into sort of different roles for SA Rugby in the sort of years to come. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the fact that Marcel Coetzee, for example, has signed a contract with Kobe Steelers, which was announced today. So interesting to sort of see what will happen there. I've been trying to find out if there's any, if it's a, it sounds like it's permanent. It doesn't sound like, we're trying to work out if it's going to be a dual contract. The fact that if will he play for the Bulls and Kobe Steelers, for example, or is he just going there? Yeah, so I mean, when you look at what sort of he said about it, it sounds pretty permanent. But yeah, we're waiting to sort of really get some more details on what's happening with that Marcel Coetzee contract and stuff like that. But yeah, before we do that, please do smash like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. And yeah, we'll start with the South Africa, the SAA coaching staff being announced, and something we've sort of been speculating for quite a long time is who was going to take charge of this SAA side, because we are playing on Thursdays, and then our box playing on sort of Saturdays. So it's a whole different squad, a whole different coaching staff, for example, different people in the box and stuff. So it could never have been Jacques Yelba and the likes, but it is still somebody within the Springbok setup. And somebody who I think has been under a lot of pressure, had to go through a lot of very heavy and I think at times very harsh criticism and maybe unjustified criticism as well. But has sort of come through the other side and really has worked hard to get this opportunity. And the head coach for the SAA will be Zwandile Stick, who is the current assistant coach for the Boks. He will be assisted by Bafana Ntleku, who is the current SA Under 20 coach, Joe Mangala, who's just moved to the Sharks as assistant coach, and Vian de Prier from the Griquas. And I think it's a very good bunch of coaches, all from very different sort of spheres, for example. So Vian de Prier is the Griquas scrum coach, so obviously he will be sort of working with the scrum and the forwards. Joey Mangala is very much a defense coach, was working in that capacity at the Bulls, and is now pretty much filling that role. Well, I think he's going to be a much more. I mean, he's going to be coaching I think from the sounds of it, looks like he's going to be the head coach of the Currie. I mean, the head coach of the Currie Cup side. So I don't know how much he's working currently with the URC side, but for example, I think that they do view Joey Mangala as a future head coach of the Bulls. I mean, of the Sharks rather. So yeah, interesting to see that. That he's also being viewed quite heavily by SA Rugby as potentially a future coach. And then Bafana Ntleku, who is the junior box coach, he has been doing very good work with those juniors. And I think if you look at the junior box, playing fantastic rugby, very much running rugby, very solid, game plan. And I think he's gotten the best out of the players he's had to work with. So he's been doing tremendous things with that junior box side. So very excited to see that he will be involved in this SAA side, and I think it's a matter of time before he actually ends up joining a Springbok staff. I do see him within the Springbok setup quite soon, the next couple of years. I reckon after the World Cup, when there is the next rejig of coaching staff, I'll be very surprised if he's not involved after success with the junior box. And I think it's good to see that there is a pipeline being built for coaches. In the past, when you looked at like SAA, for example, sides, it was often sort of one of the franchise coaches who would then take on the SAA side. So I think we saw you had Ackerman taking a charge, stuff like that, and often they would then bring their own assistants. So what I quite like about this is that it's drawing players and coaches rather from different places. So you're going one from the Junior Springboks, you're going one from the Sharks, you're going one from the Greek Quiz, one from the actual head coach is already involved with the Springboks, so he's already worked with all these players. But I think he's somebody as well who I think will be ready to take on a bigger role in the box in sort of future years. The big news as well, though, is that Rassie Erasmus will sort of be overseeing the entire structure. So he will be involved in these matches. He will be, the sort of overseeing the coaching is apparently. So if you look at the press release, for example, Erasmus will split their duties between the two teams. So they'll be working with the Springboks and with the SA20. And Erasmus said that while winning the Springbok Test matches was the top priority, the SAA team played an equally important role in playing coach development as the Boks gear up for the Rugby World Cup next year. This is what he had to say. He said the SAA matches will have multiple benefits for SA Rugby, as it will open the door for some of our top up-and-coming coaches to be exposed to high-level rugby at senior level in a national team setup, while at the same time it allows us to continue building our player base as we look ahead to the Rugby World Cup. This season alone, we used over 50 players in our test matches, which is fantastic, as one of our core pillars in the Springbok team is to build squad depth. But with limited playing opportunity for several players and the fact that we lost out on a vital year to build our squad due to COVID-19 pandemic, these matches will be crucial. He said that the closest one can get to playing for the Springboks is the SAA team, and we believe these matches will give us a good idea of the coaches and young players within our ranks, as well as offering some experienced players the opportunity to return from injury and get back to form as they contest for players with an eye on the Rugby World Cup spots. Speaking on opposition, Rasmus said that if Munster are renowned for their status as Irish rugby giants, and as we have seen in the Vodacom United Rugby Championship, they will test the team to the limit. We expect Bristol to play more of a running game, especially with Pat Lam, a former New Zealand Junior Cup player and Auckland Blues coach, influencing their style of play. These are going to be challenging matches, which is exactly what we want less than a year out from the Rugby World Cup. The Springboks and the SAA squad will be announced within the next 3 weeks. So yeah, by the time we get to sort of that last week of October, we will have a Springbok squad announcement as well as an SAA squad announcement. So yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see what the squad is. It is supposedly going to be a 50-man squad. So yeah, I think we're going to see a very. I think, they talked about the fact that over 50 players have played for the Boks so far this year. We're going to see all those sort of players involved. I'd be very surprised if we see anybody being dropped in inverted commas. For example, from a hooker point of view, I would like to see Joseph Dweba and Johan Kovala as your SAA hookers, potentially. So I think we will see a couple of new faces. I think that we've got to look at, Marnie Liebach, I think, will be involved. And potentially another 10. I think Jan Corson will probably be involved if he's fit. I do think we obviously have to look at a couple of hookers. I think that maybe another prop will be involved, for example. But if we look at the SAA side, and I think maybe we'll do this tomorrow, I think you're probably looking at a front row of like Instuko Mtunu, Johan Kovala, or Joseph Dweba and Thomas Toy, for example. You could have a second row of Samuel Murat and Ruan Nokia. For me, that selects itself pretty easily. You could go Dion Free, Albert Lowe, Evan Roos as a loose trio, or Renan Elstad in there. You could go a 9-10 of Grant Williams, Marnie Liebach. You could go 11... Spoon Corsi coming back into the setup. You could go 12-13, Esther Hazard, and I don't know who you can look at outside centre. Depends on who's around and who they want to play there. But for example, if you want to bring in a new player that the likes of maybe like a Henk Bake, for example, if he suddenly gets that call up, or a Swanasiya Milani, for example, or somebody in that sort of mold, or if you bring in Raymond Roulet or into that 13. 14 could be probably be Kane Moody, and at fullback you can have a likes of Kurtley Orange, or you can have Kane Moody at 15, or you could, there's so many different options you could have. For me, it's quite easy to start seeing how an SAA side could look on paper. And I think it'll be a very good SAA side. I think it will very much be an SAA side who are very much the sort of the form players and maybe probably the fan favorites. Also, we talk about players coming back from injury. I think that's sort of ergo, Johan Corson, maybe Arceus Neyman, although I think that it's probably going to be too soon for him. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see which of the sort of players who are coming back from injury really are. I don't think Pollard, for example, make the end of the tour. But I think it'll be a really fun SAA side. I'm very excited to see some of these players getting opportunities. For me, I think it's almost a pity that one of the SAA games isn't like sort of a week before type thing, and you could like sort of experiment with the existing box squad. Play like Damien Williams at 12, um, with anybody really at 10, and have try and sort of new combinations with that regard. But I don't think we're going to be able to. We're not going to be able to see that, unfortunately, because of the sort of the timing and stuff. But I'm very excited for this premium, and this is what I kept sort of saying the entire time. I understand that we want to see more of Evan Lewis, and I want to understand that we want to see more of, your Ulrich Lowe's and stuff like that. And people we did not see enough Garcia probably does maybe get into the SAA side, but it's a case for me of these SAA games basically sort of are the ones to build the depth. We didn't have that 2021 season, for example, and that was in the 2020 season, where I think a lot of these players probably would have been capped, and we would have seen more opportunities being given around there if we had that, for example, that season. But we had a very tricky balance this year of trying to build squad depth whilst also trying to win series and trying to win rugby championships. And we did come up short in the Rugby Championship, unfortunately. So some people are saying, well, what did we gain? We lost the Rugby Championship and we didn't even win the Rugby Championship, and we didn't even build depth. Do you really want to be building depth when you're contesting for a trophy? And I think that, we did see a little bit of rotation, but I think that obviously, and they said as much, the loss against Australia meant that we couldn't rotate like we had planned. I think they were hoping to beat Australia twice in Australia, and then be able to sort of rotate more in South Africa against Argentina, which is a fixture we very rarely struggle. I think we've lost one game in Argentina ever. But then things didn't go as planned, and things don't always go as planned, and you do have to sort of adjust and stuff like that, which is why I said we didn't see as much rotation. So that's what's happening with the SAA side. As I said, we'll have to wait for the squad announcement. I think maybe we'll do a stream in the next week, choosing an SAA side, and we'll do a sort of a fan chosen thing. Maybe we'll do that on like tomorrow, Thursday. We sort of start to build our SAA side, based on who we think deserves to be there, and we can also we can do a bench as well. We can put out a graphic, and it can be quite an interactive show. I want to do some more stuff like that. Like maybe our URC player of the week, team of the week, for example, needs to be a live stream, and we could sort of debate that a bit, which would be quite a lot of fun. But some other news, the transfer news, is that Marcel Coetzee has signed a deal with the Kobe Steelers in Japan. And the understanding, although it hasn't been confirmed as of yet, is that it will be a dual contract. So basically, he'll still be involved with the Bulls. This is not him leaving the Bulls, but he will. A little bit like Lakanya, where he kind of gets that sabbatical option where he can go and play in Japan for a couple of months, earn some big bucks, and then still be available for the Bulls. His contract, or the season for Japan, gets underway in December, on the 18th of December, and runs until the end of April, which means that May, June, which for example is still URC season, he could still return for that. So what it would mean for Marcel Coetzee, for example, is that he wouldn't play URC from December up until basically May, and we'll probably miss the group stages of the Challenge Cup, or the Champions Cup rather, which the Bulls are playing in. But speaking on, because he has played in Japan before, speaking on the move, he said, "I'm looking forward to playing in League One as a member of the Steelers and meeting the fans at the stadium." He said, "I will do everything in my power to help the Kobe Steelers win the championship. My family and I are looking forward to new life and new encounters in Japan." So it's not good news for the Bulls, because you're now losing your captain, much like the Sharks also lost the Kanya. But I do think that this is something that sides need to look at. For example, if as a Lions fan, they said to me, right, we signed Malcolm Marks, we will play in Japan from December through to April, then he'll come play for us in May, June. I'll take that. 100% I'll take that. Not every single season, but you sit there say, they get a sabbatical once every 3 years, for example. For example, you're looking at your young players, your Jordan Hendrickson, your Henk Copenbeek. You say to him, sign a 5-year contract, and we'll allow a sabbatical in Japan. where he can go and play for 4 months and earn some big bucks. Do those, be proactive, because I'd rather lose a player for 4 months once every 2 or 3 years than to lose them altogether. I do think that we need to be very cognizant of where we are as an economy and where we are as teams within our sort of player budgets, and we need to be proactive about it. So, as a Bulls fan, you're losing Master Coetzee for the Champions Cup beginning and the URC, but you're also getting for the last 2 months. That is probably better than losing him altogether, isn't it? If we're being brutally honest. And look, some people might say, they'd rather them leave, and you'd rather sort of back players who are sort of committed. But I think that the reality of our currency and the reality of where we are, and it means that they can commit for longer contracts, and they can commit to a union and actually be involved, whilst knowing financially they're still going to be okay. They're still not going to, I mean, like, for example, Andre Pollard's supposed to be missing anything like 12 million rand a year at Leicester Tigers. Please explain to me why. Let's call. So I'm going to use the Lions as an example because they always get ransacked. Henker van Beek, up and coming number 13, looks absolutely class at the moment. Has had a great start. Look what happened to Tyron Green. So you as the Premiership side, you're looking and thinking, what's he earning in a year? Less than R1 million probably. We can definitely offer him more. We could probably offer him R2 million a year, for example. Henker van Beek sits there going, they're going to double my salary. Why should I stay here? And if the Lions sit there saying, okay, listen, stay here on your R1 million salary or whatever it is, but we will allow you to go and play in Japan next year, 2024, for example. Like just after the World Cup, we'll allow you that 4 month sabbatical in Japan. Maybe you can earn an extra R1 million in that Japanese sabbatical or more. I don't know what the Japanese wages are like, for example, at the moment, but if that means he then commits to the Lions and stays at the Lions, do it. Because the other option is he leaves altogether and we never get him back. So it's not ideal. It's never going to be ideal. But if it's a way to keep these players involved and keep them in our system, then I think it has to be looked at. Some other news is that Eddie Jones will be announcing his Autumn Nations Cup, Autumn Nations Series rather, squad. I think it's tomorrow. Where is it? I've got the press release somewhere here. Squad announcement. Sorry, we are Monday next week. So Eddie Jones will be announcing it next week. And what will be interesting to see is if they ask to confirm what will happen in that last week where the Springboks are due to play against England outside the test window. And we have to sort of wait and see exactly who's going to be available. If the Japan players are going to be available, if the Premiership players are going to be available, if the top 14 players are going to be available, the URC players will be available because we have kind of got that relationship with our URC sides where they are a bit more flexible and they kind of sort of work in line with the Springboks. Obviously, your overseas teams don't. And that's the reality. Welcome, Sean. How's it, Mo? Bertie is saying, not great timing him leaving for the start of the Champions Cup. Yeah, Tian van den Berg saying, I'm really happy for Ntleco, Mangala and Stick. I think the future of coaching our country is looking bright. So he says, I rate the Sharks are attempting to do what Leinster did by creating a squad full of internationals. If the coaches managed to make them gel, could be a very special side. Keen to see watch it play out. Yeah, and what will be interesting, for example, is just small things. Joey Mangala is now going to spend a month with the Springbok setup, and he's involved with the Sharks. So many players from the Sharks are involved with the Boks. Those sort of connections, I think, are going to be very important because, Mangala is going to be able to see firsthand, first of all, what the Springboks are telling them and how they want them to play, and maybe understand a little bit more on how the Sharks can get the best of those sort of players. And I'm not talking about how the Sharks get the best out of Evan Etzebeth. I don't think you need too many brains to be able to get the best out of Evan Etzebeth. As a Sharks coach, how do we mold into Tukanzunu into a top prop? How do we turn Grant Williams into a world-class scrum half? How do we get Grant Williams gelling with Buddha Chamberlain, and how do we get the combination with Ryan Jansen Rensburg with the Kanya Amrat? Ryan Jansen Rensburg is in the same mold as Damon Day-Lindy, hard-hitting, hard-running centre. How do they get the combination right with the Kanya Am? How are the Boks doing it? How can we do it? Aprile Fassi, for example, how do we get him playing well with the other players? So the Sharks, for example, I think having Mangala involved in the Springbok setup, basically the SAA setup rather, I think will be very valuable to them in terms of understanding how it sort of works. Because whilst he is the Currie Cup coach, there's no doubt that he will be working with the URC side. at some stages. Whether it's just like on a consultancy base, he comes in once a week and sort of says, whether he's putting in plans in place that they're then coaching and stuff like that. I've got no doubt that he still is involved in some capacity within the URC structures and stuff. But also, you've obviously got Neil Powell, who is going to be sort of starting up things within the Sharks setup, and that's going to be very interesting as well. So the Sharks have got pretty stacked coaches, except for arguably maybe the head coach, where there seems to be a lot of pressure on Sean Everett at the moment, because the results and the performances are not matching the type of players that are running out every week. And for me, that Sharks depth is disgusting, and not so much from just take away the Springboks. They've got no Springboks playing for them at the moment, apart from Thomas Satoy and those sort of players. But if we go back and we look at the side that they fielded this past weekend, there are some really quality players who, for me, walk into quite a few sides of this competition. You go look at the lineups, for example, and Instuka, Thomas Satoy, both Cat Springboks. You've got Kieran from Fury at hooker, Justin Basson and Reniel Hugo. Is a lot of combination, which, they can get better. But you look at the loose chair, for example, James Fenton, Dylan Richardson, Pepsi Buthelezi, former SA under-20 captain, Scotland international Dylan Richardson, and James Fenton, I think, could be a world-class player. You've got Grant Williams, who's been part of the Springbok setup for the last how many months, even though he's played one game for them. He's got a Springbok cap, though. Buddha Chamberlain, you've got Takia Abrahams, but then between Ben Tapawahi and Nancy Rensburg, both international players, even though they're not currently involved. Werner Koch, former Sevens players, for example. Alfredo Fassi at 15 is a Springbok player. You look at, and even off the bench, you look at Carly Sari, who for me could be a Springbok easily. Sikomoza Noche is a Springbok. Anthony Folman, Cameron Wright, Martin Porkito, players who are very talented. And that's for me what I think is so good about the Sharks, is that you can still add 9 Springboks to this side. Maybe even 10, I think I got it right. Bongi Manambi, Oxenshare, Sia Khaleesi, Ibn Etzebeth, Jaden Hendricks, Kanya Makazol Mapimpi, who am I missing out? I'm on 7. I think there's somebody else as well. So you can look at bringing in 7, 8 Springbok into the side, which is half a side. They can basically field a full starting 15 of players who are internationally capped. They can. If you go Oxenshare, Bongi Manambi, Thomas the Toy, Evan Etzebeth, your number 5 is probably the issue. But for example, so maybe the number 5 is they're another lock that's on international cap. But you're gonna have Sia Khaleesi. You can have Sia Khaleesi, Noche, and just for argument's sake, they've still got Vincent Tuka to come back into the sides, by the way. For example, if you went Dylan Richardson, Sia Khaleesi, and Sika with a Noche, just from a cap point of view, or internationally capped, you could go Jaden Hendricks at Perrin Bosch at 10, for example. You could go Pimpi 11, Ryan Jens at 12, Lakanya at 13. You could go. Or you could go to Kanye. I'm on the wing. You won't, but you could. If you just wanted to do players who are international cap, well, I suppose Bernard Cox is an international sevens player anyway, and then Apple Fassi. So they're basically going to have in their strongest 23, they'll probably have about 17 to 18 internationally capped players, of which probably about 12 current players who are currently involved and have played recently for international sides. So it's an unbelievable squad. But they need to get that coaching right at the end of the day. Gerard says, Steve, do you see Tian Skuman getting called up for the end of year tour? He had a very good game in the Gallagher Premiership, very solid and reliable. I'd be lying to you if I told you I'd watched much of him recently. So I don't know. I'd be surprised. For me, it just seems like they will always go local before they go international. I don't know why. Very few players, bar like Rand Alstad, for example, are being brought in from the top 14 in the Premiership uncapped. So yeah, I have heard good things about Tian Skuman playing over at I think it's Newcastle. Lots of experience, and he must be going on age, so he must be in his late 20s, 30s by now. So if he's going well, maybe. Rob de Preer, for example, is playing very good rugby at the moment. Unfortunately, we don't watch enough to be able to sort of. The problem with South Africans is we don't watch Premiership and we don't watch top 14. So as soon as a player leaves South Africa, Raven Rude, for example, left South Africa, we banned him for that 54 57 or whatever it was in Wellington against New Zealand. And now people sit there saying, okay, cool, let's bring Raymond Rula in. No, he can't tackle. And you're like, well, just watch the top 14. He's become an absolute defensive demon. And he's playing for the best team in Europe. They won the European Champions Cup. They won the Heineken Cup. And he was a major part of that. Dylan Lates as well, playing superb rugby. He's even playing a 10 for La Rochelle. So, but the problem is because we don't watch it very frequently enough, we've kind of got this predisposed idea of what Raymond Rula is, and what that is, what we think of him is what he was when he left, you know. And the concept that players can improve and get better and be playing really good rugby doesn't often come into it. So, yeah, I don't know if Chance Kuman, I don't know what he's been playing like. I haven't seen him in a while. I do need to try and watch more Premiership, but there's so much rugby in the weekend. I don't know how some people watch a tremendous amount. It's impressive. But yeah, maybe he could be a good option. As I said, very experienced. Tian saying, I think Walt Steenkamp should be included in the SAA side. I feel like he's quietly become the best number 4 in SA. Apparently, potentially leaving the Bulls. You know, I think I saw that his contract's potentially up, and potentially not getting a renewal. So interesting to see what will happen there. I would love to see the Lions go and buy somewhere like that. Like, I'm sure he's going overseas. But imagine the Lions go and say his contract's up to an end. Guess what? We've got Walt Steenkamp. Like, why can't we ever go and poach somebody from a union that they actually want to keep? I mean, Marius Lowe has been like our, Marius Lowe, Edel van der Merwe have been like our only two sort of, and maybe it's the name of the Humber, 2 players where other unions sort of wanted to keep them. But I mean, even you look at the name of the Humber, and the Sharks have more scrum halves than they do problems in the coaching staff, which is a lot. And so no, I don't think the Humber was a massive loss to them. And you think they're still going to have 2 international scrum halves involved in the 23, so they don't really need it in a Humber. But yeah. He is a very good player though, Miles Steenkamp. Bit of an unsung hero. Everybody gets so sort of fixed on Ruan Nokia that they kind of forget the work that Miles Steenkamp's doing. Hey, so Steve, I'm worried the Sharks will rest our Springboks again this week against Leicester. Seems like throwing away the game. You guys are still away, aren't you? If it's yeah, no, you're not going to get any of your box back, Chief. What you saw last weekend is what you'll see. Sia Khaleesi and Evan Etzebeth are still out in Durban. Bongi Manamba you won't see this weekend. You won't see any of those players. Yeah, they won't play until maybe you might get a game out of them towards the end of the. Let's see the future. So maybe you might see an Evan Etzebeth debut against Ulster on the 21st of October, for example, 22nd of October. Maybe at a push. If not, then they might be able to get a game in against the Bulls. So there's a bye that week. Yeah, so 21st of October, 22nd of October is, I think, when you might see an Etzebeth debut. I'll be very surprised if we saw next weekend, for example. They are at home against Glasgow Warriors, but I think that they will be rested for 2 or 3 weeks because he's played so much rugby. Tiamat Berg, so Jason Jenkins getting rave reviews from Leicester fans as well. So many players, so little space for them. Yeah, I'll be interested to see if we might actually see Jason Jenkins in the SAS squad, to be honest. I think that he's very much fits the role of a Springbok lock. I think also, even the fact that Archie Snyman's kind of fallen off with his injuries, I think that Jason Jenkins got an opportunity to push himself into that squad and to be a genuine option for the Boks. So interesting to see what will happen there. But we're going to wrap up. People, thank you very much for tuning and watching us. A reminder, please, you guys sign up for BetCoza. Because yeah, we want to give away free bets during our streams, but we can't give away free bets if you're not signed up. So go and sign up for BetCoza. We will hopefully have a Forever Sports Bet Boost again this weekend. Our Bet Boost won last weekend, which is quite cool, with 7-1 odds. So yeah, hopefully we will start seeing some more wins, and we're going to be also looking to try and do a betting kind of guide this week as well. So yeah, but please do smash like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well, and I'll chat